This is the Fundamental Escape Podcast with your host, Mark Fitzgerald. I'm David Werba, and this is episode 14. We have Rita Goodroe on the show today, who's a former attorney and now a dating and relationship coach. On a whim in 2006, she started a singles group at meetup.com that ultimately grew to over 4,000 members. She met a guy there, dated for 5 years, and it didn't work out, and then she decided to go on 35 dates in 35 days at age 35, and this experience led her to start doing dating and relationship coaching. In this episode, we talk with Rita about how social media and texting often affects dating and how it has evolved in the past 10 years. We also went deeper to uncover some problems that often arise when people enter the dating world with radically different values from how they were raised, especially in the religious sense. We also talk about the tradition of American marriage and the fundamental flaws that may lead to high divorce rates. Rita gives a new car analogy and talks about the law of attraction for game players, which is kind of interesting. Now, finally, you may notice that Mark forcefully clears his throat a few times in this episode, and it seems to be around the time that we talk about the church and sexuality, so we're trying to figure out the root cause of this issue, but we'll get back to you on that. For now, here's the podcast with Rita Goodroe.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Fundamental Escape Podcast. I'm here today with my co-host David Werber. Do you want to say a quick hi there, David?
Hello!
And our guest today is Rita Goodroe, who is a bit of a relationship expert. So do you want to just introduce yourself, Rita, and just talk a little bit about where you're coming from and what you do from day to day?
Sure. First of all, it's great to be talking to you guys today. Thank you so much. And really, I am a relationship coach. I'm first and foremost, I'm a reformed attorney. So I was an attorney, still am an attorney. I just don't actively practice the law, but for about 14 years now. But a few years ago, I made the jump. I left corporate America and jumped full-time into coaching. And I started with dating and relationship coaching and very quickly learned that we have relationships with a lot more in our lives than just other people. We have relationships with money and with time and with ourselves and with our business, family, friends, and in the dating relationship world. And so I branched out and became a relationship coach on those 5 key relationships. And I help people transform them so that they're able to kind of drop victim mentality and embrace what they need to take responsibility for getting the results that they want in those areas of their life. And so that's what I help people do.
Hey, Rita, did you say reformed attorney or recovering attorney?
No, it's both, a little both of every day. Every day. It feels like a little bit of both. I can't let the attorney go, but I definitely have left it behind.
Nice. So I'm kind of curious to ask, what was your sort of passion or drive to get into the whole field of relationship coaching?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting story. So I had started a meetup. There's something where I live, and it's national, and it's even over the world, but meetup.com. And meetup.com is a site that lets you start lots of in-person social groups. And on a whim in 2006, I started a singles group because I was single and all of my friends were married or in relationships. And so I needed to meet and hang out with other single people. So I started this group thinking I'd meet a person or two and it would like shut down and that would be it. I'd make a friend and that would be it and it would be awesome. And there are 4,000 members in it now. So cut to 9 years later and they're 4,000. Wow. So yeah, there was a need for it, I guess. Singles in the Suburbs is the name. It's outside of DC, and there's a need for it. So I was running that, and what was really funny is I was getting all of this media coming up to me, asking me about trends for being single, trends for dating, anything related to being single or dating. And I had met a guy right after I started the group. So I met this guy, and we dated for 5 years until I say suddenly, not so suddenly, he dumped me, and it wasn't sudden. I mean, 5 years, there were signs everywhere, but it felt very sudden the night that it happened. And I went to see a friend and I was drinking a bottle of wine and I thought, I'm about to turn 35. This is back when I was about to turn 35. And I said, I've had 5 long-term relationships over the course of my life and they have 2 things in common. They all ended and me. And those were the only 2 things that they had in common. So I decided that I wanted to figure out what I was doing. And so I decided to go on 35 dates in 35 days and I blogged all about it. And I didn't know anything about the guys. I didn't want to know their age or their race or their profession. And I had them pick the activity. And the point was to meet people I would normally not meet and do things I would normally not do. So I had to be uncomfortable and I had to deal with it. Well, I learned a lot from that process, and I even met a coach during that process who convinced me that I really was already coaching people, and I needed to kind of hop into that because I was miserable as an attorney. And so that's how I did it, and that's why I started with dating and relationship coaching, because I had already cultivated members of my singles group, and then I had a huge following with my blog, and I was, in a way, already coaching singles on dating. And so it was a natural progression for me to kind of jump into there, and I realized I loved it so much that I was able to completely leave the law behind, and it's just kind of taken me forward ever since.
Yeah, well, I mean, how did you organize 35 dates in 35 days? Was it through the meetup group, or was it using dating sites? Or?
No, it was really funny. I sent an email out to all my friends and I said, this is what I'm doing. And I put it on Facebook and I think some other social media stuff. And I said, this is what I'm doing. I want to do this. I'm drunk as I type this. I don't know if it's going to work out or not, but here's the deal.
I think that's how Facebook started.
It's like, here's the deal. I don't, here are the 35 days that I'm free. I'm free on these days. And so if somebody wants to be one of the dates, they can just email me at this address. And I don't really need to know anything other than where I'm going to meet these people in their first name, right?
Oh, so this wasn't like consecutive days.
No, it was 35 dates and 35 consecutive days. So it was like I'm free from I can't remember the exact dates, but it was like September something to October something. And I actually had 35 free days on my calendar. So I put that out there and people ended up forwarding it to other people who forwarded it to people. And it ended up on the National Press Club mailing list when someone forwarded it. And then those people forwarded it to people. And I woke up and within 24 hours, I had 60 people who had emailed me saying that they would like to be one of the 35 dates.
I guess the first question I'd have to ask is, who was the creepiest person you met in that experience?
There wasn't. I was really, going into it, I was totally anticipating awful dates and creepy people. And I don't know if it was because it was the nature of what I was doing, but the people who were attracted to it, because they knew, I was very upfront about what I was doing. And the reason I got so many responses, most people said, this is great. This is really what dating should be. Just meeting a person, finding out about a person. No expectations, no attachment to it needs to lead anywhere. You're meeting someone, and we know that you're meeting more people, and it's just fun. We get to pick an activity and show you something new. And so I think people who were attracted to that were people of a certain personality type. So I found actually each date to just be really interesting and enjoyable.
Yeah.
Wow, you should have worn like a GoPro or Google Glass for each date.
This
Live
was before
feed,
that.
YouTube, it would have been...
I don't even think all of that was out. I don't even think Google Glass was out when I did this. This was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit. We obviously met you through Blab, and we talked a bit about the whole sort of breakdown with social media in relationships, where everybody is kind of stalking people before they meet them and going, "Oh, what do you like? Do I like this? Are we the same?" Like, can you sort of expand on your take on?
I hate it. I coach on online dating, but I actually have surrounded myself as well with some colleagues who are specific to online date coaching, and we get together and we talk about this stuff all the time. And the first mistake, the biggest mistake that people are making, they're treating online dating entirely differently than they would in-person dating. So if I'm out at a bar and you look across the room at me and you kind of smile, you might come over and I'll engage in a conversation with you, probably surface level for a few minutes, and you might say, I've really enjoyed this. Would you like to get together sometime? I'd love to take you out. And I'll say, okay. But online, people don't do that. They need to know every detail about that person before they ever get face to face. And I say that that's a problem for 2 reasons. 1, it's not natural. It's not the way that we get to know people. 2, it is, you're building up expectations. So if you do think you're going to like this person when you meet this person, you're building up all these high expectations, and then you meet the person in person and it's not what you thought. So you feel let down, you feel frustrated, or it works in the opposite way. You hear things that would not have bothered you if you had met the person first. If you saw them out in the world first and then they told you a nugget or something they like, or, they kind of had a sense of humor, or so, you would be like, wow, that's okay because I really love everything else about this person. But you will rule them out for it online. So you kind of judge people a little too harshly online when you go about it that way. So I try to get my clients to use online dating as a glance across the room, that you're interested enough that you want to get to the in-person, a coffee or something, to get to know about that person and not try to get to know about the person too much through online, because you'll never know about a person until you're sitting across from them anyway.
Yeah. It's funny, I think, even sort of to broaden the whole thing of communication in general, I think it's interesting because you can have these sort of interesting back and forth conversations through like text online or whatever it is. And then people are sort of almost hesitant sometimes to take it into the real world. There is this kind of skeptical kind of stepping back, if you know what I'm saying, like where we don't, I don't know, there's something, the whole online thing has changed the game of communication overall anyway, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, a little bit. And people start using it as a way to kill time, just because they're kind of, they're lonely in the moment, so they might want to pen pal or they're emailing. But the problem is when you know that that's not what you want and you don't communicate that and you get too wrapped up in it. So I'll get clients who say, I've been talking to this guy and he's emailed me back and forth now like millions of times, but he won't ask me out. And I'm like, then why in the hell are you still emailing this guy? Like, tell him, I really enjoyed talking to you and I would really love to meet you in person and continue this conversation in person. Would you like to get together, to do that? Or, would you like to get together sometime? And if they hem and haw and they say no, they're not looking for the same thing as you. So you need to move on and free up your energy, right? But people are really hesitant to kind of just be firm about what they're looking for, and they get wrapped up into this kind of pen pal feeling online, when again, if someone was just sitting across the table from you every night, they came into the bar you're at and never asked you out, eventually you'd be like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what you're looking for. Right?
Rita,
I need to get up and talk to other people.
Right. I mean, we want to go a little deeper than that. You brought up a good point, but like dating communication may be what people may feel is the norm in terms of how they were raised, or maybe they were like following a guideline that's kind of starts to overlap with their religious beliefs. We wanted to talk about that with you. Like, let's just say like you were raised Orthodox Jewish, fundamental Christian, Muslim, any type of like fundamental religion, like religious belief or spiritual belief. And, and even atheist, like a fundamental atheist. So let's say that you choose to kind of no longer adhere to that religious belief when you become an adult and you start to get into the dating world and relationship experience, and it's vastly different than what you were taught as a young person, from your parents or from the church in terms of marriage and dating and all that stuff. I'm sure you've come across these people in your coaching experience, but I know there's millions of people in this situation where they're just kind of thrown into a new world, and there's no longer a guideline in this new world that they're living, and they're just jumping in. Really, but what I'm saying is like when it's like, I'm emailing somebody, about dating, or I meet them in person, and it's like you have this former belief system that you were raised in, and now you're on your own, and there's no guidebook. Yeah. It's like people are just kind of lost, so they read books, they talk to friends, and so ultimately, it would probably be helpful if they came to you to kind of give them some direction, right?
Well, they do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is a lot of why people kind of, when they finally reach out to me, they've reached a point where they're so tired of feeling lost or either realizing that they're doing something to sabotage the relationships that they're in, that they want to change it. So, and so it's always rooted in that somewhere. So the first thing I do with them is I kind of ask them to go through this exercise where I have them I tell them, right, that most people, the actions that they take and the description that they have of themselves is rooted in what everybody thinks are their values. But the values that govern them aren't really their own, because we inherit them from parents and school and friends and growing up. And in fact, there's some science behind the fact that they call it emotional programming. And you're 95% emotionally programmed by the time you're 18 years old. So your thoughts about yourself and the world and how you operate in it and what's good or bad, right or wrong, is instilled in you by the time you're 18. And so where are we, right? We're mainly at home, whatever our version of home is. So if it was an orphanage or with our grandparents or that is where we are to learn those values. So we actually associate love with home because it's the first place we ever got to understand what love is, even if it's negative. So if it was being hit or beaten or yelled at or screamed at or something totally negative or all the way positive, that is what we start associating love with. That becomes our baseline. So then when we're out in the world and we're out dating, if it's not that, it doesn't feel normal to us. If we were disrespected at home and we meet someone who does respect us, we feel like that's not right. Like there's something off about that. Like that shouldn't happen. We should actually be disrespected. And we seek that stuff out to be comfortable. So I have my clients go through and identify situations and events that happened in their life between the time they can remember all the way till they're 18 and identify the decisions that they made about themselves because of that and how it led to love choices that they're making. So for example, one of mine was I was overweight as a kid. And growing up overweight as a kid, the decision I made about myself was that people wouldn't like me for who I was. I had to do something to get people to like me. I had to be the class clown, or I had to help people, like help them with their homework, drive them places. I had to earn someone liking me as a friend or a boyfriend. And so my love choices were to actually go after people who didn't want to be with me, who were either just friends or already taken, because I felt like I had to earn their love, right? So identifying that is really important to understand why you're choosing the people you are. And then you take it to the next level, which is that serving me? Is this line of thought getting me to where I want to go? And start getting really clear about where that place is that you want to go.
Just to add to what David was saying there, I grew up, as I've sort of explained, I grew up Christian, I grew up very religious myself, and this is where I'd be keen, if you can specifically talk to this point, is, to sum it up, I guess, when you grow up in the world that I did, you handed this idea that there's this big ultimate plan and there's one person out there for you and you have to figure out who they are, and if you miss that person, then you're just alone forever. And in regards to like sexuality, for example, like you're handed some horrendous ideas. Like you're basically told, don't have sex until you're married. That's all the advice you need. And it's crazy. Like, this is a little bit of, just hopefully this will make you laugh. But, I remember growing up in our youth group, we had an event where they had the local doctor from the town I grew up in. He was a Christian himself. And he essentially came along and explained in explicit detail every sexually transmitted disease on the planet. And I think he actually had some slides, like images, to show us as well. And it was terrifying. And it was basically like, that's all you need to know, kids. Like, just wait till you're married. And I'm like, okay, that's what you get handed. Like, go.
Yeah, no, you're right. We do, right? That's what we inherit that. And we kind of, as a kid, don't question it. We just kind of take it on and grow up with it. But the only way that you can even start changing that is to actually start sitting and thinking, what do you really want, right? What is it that you're really wanting with a person? You have to get clear about, but to do that, you have to deconstruct your values. So you actually go and say, what were my parents' values about sex? What were my friends' values about sex? The culture growing up at the time, what were their values, the whole culture about sex? The thoughts I have about sex, where did I learn them from? And you have to actually like write it out like an exercise and then look at it and say, then the next part is to say, now, what do I want in a relationship? And most people say, well, I want an intimate relationship. I want to know if I'm compatible with someone before I get together with them forever. So I'll say, well, do these things that you just identified as the values you've inherited that you just deconstructed, do all of those little bullet points get you to where you need to go? And they'll say, no, it doesn't. This is keeping me from it. And so then we work together to find out, how can you start putting things in place that will take you to where you want to go? Now, some people, it does. They say, no, that's very important to me. Even though I've seen where it comes from, that still serves me. That's important to me. And I'm taking it as my own, and I don't want to have sex until I'm married. And I say, then that's great, right? But at least you've done the work to make sure that it's in line with where you want to be, and that you're not just kind of on autopilot blindly following other people's ideas.
Yeah. I guess just to kind of, I guess I'm trying to be as specific as possible. Like the thought comes to mind of the whole sort of the Ashley Madison sort of hack that came out recently. And, you know, there were a lot of church pastors and leaders that were like freaking out because they had accounts on there and stuff like that. And I suppose what I'd like you to, if you can sort of speak to, is that whole idea of that when the idea of sexuality gets so repressed, then it becomes toxic. And I'm sure that you would have come across people that have been heavily influenced by that reality, and sort of how do you deal with that when you're at that place where it's just like you have such negative kind of connotations of sex and sexuality.
But you know that but it's rooted in that same concept. So I'll give you an example. I had a client who was total over the top with sex, would meet people and have sex with them night 1, night 2, night 3, and wonder why they weren't turning into serious relationships, and why she wasn't, attracting the kind of people and having those moments that she wanted to have. So we deconstructed her thoughts about sex, and we found out she grew up in an extremely religious family, daughter of a pastor, but like a very extreme religious family. And so she kind of noticed by doing this work that around college, she decided to rebel against her family. It was kind of like one of these, you know what, I'm out of the house and you kept me down all the time and we couldn't talk about this and we couldn't do this. So F you, I'm going out and I'm going to do everything I want to do, right? And she just got wrapped up in it. And it actually kind of became her thought of what empowerment was and what not being repressed was. But she never stopped to think, is that really what I want? It was a rebellion against her family, and not necessarily something that got her to where she wanted to go. And so she was out there, and so it was so ingrained in her, she had been so repressed by it that she did the opposite. She jumped to the opposite extreme. And so she had to sit back and go, wait a minute, this behavior is obviously, while I'm not judging if it's right or wrong or good or bad to sleep with people on date 1 or date 2, I don't judge any of that. But for her, it wasn't getting her the meaningful connections that she wanted. And so she had to then work through saying, it's okay for me to actually embrace some of these ideas and mix them with my own and move forward. So yeah, you can be so repressed about it that you end up jumping to the opposite extreme, or so repressed by it, you can't even think about doing it when you're out there, right? It's like all of a sudden you get triggered back to childhood and all of these thoughts. So that's where the difference between coaching and therapy comes in, though, because if it's so ingrained in you that it is actually triggering certain things from the past that you might have to dig into more, that's where a therapist would actually come in and help someone work through some of these repressed feelings and memories. A coach comes in at the time that you're kind of like, you know what, I've dwelled in the negative and the why and where it all came from for so long that who cares? I'm ready to do something to change it. Tell me how I change these thoughts. And that's where I come in, right? But you can be so overwhelmed by it that you have to do a lot of work before you're ready to take the action to change it.
Okay, Rita, let's look at this from a different angle. Like 20 years ago, I started hearing statistics that 50% of all marriages end in divorce. Then 10 years ago, I started hearing 60. Sometimes I hear 70% now. I've always wanted to deconstruct that, from the end of the marriage going backwards. So I kind of want to challenge you to just hear if you have maybe a handful of reasons that you feel are at the core of why marriages don't work. Does it lead back to religious belief? Does it lead back to communication, boundaries, all the points that you discuss in your coaching? Just one quick perception that I see just in terms of spiritual or religious belief is that, yeah, you have those, the high school sweethearts who grew up in the same kind of religious bubble, and they stay married for like 40 years, and they profess that's just like the perfect path for people to take, but there's no perfect path. And I mean, the statistics, they don't lie. So obviously there are some core problems just in the tradition of marriage. There's something wrong there. And I'm just curious of your opinion on that.
Yeah, I don't know that I think that there's something wrong in the tradition of marriage, but I definitely think there's something wrong in the way people approach relationships. So I see it all the time. People are putting commitment before compatibility. So they get really hooked on a person for all kinds of reasons, usually not anything real deep or where they really know someone very well yet, but they get kind of attached and hooked on a person and like them around and like having them around. Sometimes I call it the shiny car syndrome, where they run to this car. You would run to a car on a lot and say, "Ooh, this is a really pretty red car. I love the way it smells and I love the way it feels and it fits so good." And then the sales guy comes over and says, "Would you like to hear about the gas mileage?" And you're like, "No." "Would you like to hear about the warranty?" "No." Because the minute that you start hearing that stuff, there's some risk that you might not want that car anymore. Well, people do that in relationships all the time. They hold off asking questions that could pop that bubble, and then they're already hooked on the person. So the minute they start realizing that there are areas that aren't compatible, they start justifying that away or rationalizing that away or turning a blind eye, and they stay with the wrong person, right? That's one reason. That's just one that people put. I need a relationship. I need a they put the commitment before they find out about compatibility. That's a huge mistake. And the other is dating people for the wrong reasons, low self-esteem, all kinds of things. And you're looking for someone to fill some voids in your life, not because that's the right person, but because you haven't filled yourself. So you're seeking other people to do it, and then you get into a relationship with the wrong person. So it's the way people go about dating that leads them to the wrong people, not whether marriage is correct or not. It's how people go about picking those partners for the rest of their life.
Okay, so what are some of the right reasons to date someone? Like, what are the top 5 right reasons that you should continue dating somebody?
Right. So it would be, well, first of all, that's what you want, right? So you need to know. Some people haven't even talk about not deconstructing a value. Some people are on the marriage train without even realizing that, wait a minute, they don't really have any interest in getting married, right? They're just kind of on this train and they're on a ride and they're headed to the church and they don't even want it, right? So, I mean, first of all, you have to either want to get married or want to know what your purpose is for what you're looking for in terms of your relationship with somebody. So you have to be clear about that first. But then the next one is someone's compatible with you. When people come home from dates, they're usually asking, did this person like me? Did they think I was attractive? Did they think I was funny? Are they going to want to go out with me again? Instead, think, how did I feel with this person? Did I feel good about myself? Did I feel respected? Did this person kind of support me or compliment me, lift me up, right? In some way, not filling a void, but did they not bring me down? Did they not make me feel less? It's not their job to make you feel good or to make you feel whole. It's really just somebody's job to not make you feel crappy about yourself. So that this person makes you feel good about who you are, that you can respect who they are and they can respect who you are, that your core values are compatible. Because here's the thing, right? If you, David or Mark, if one of you are in what's called a career sphere, where career is your top value and family might be your second, and I'm in a family sphere where family is my top value and career is my second, then here's the way that self-esteem works. Anytime you make a decision out of alignment with your values, your self-esteem starts tanking. So anytime that if I'm into family and you're into your career, anytime that you choose career over family, I'm going to feel angry about that. I'm going to feel resentful about that. I'm going to feel mad about it. But if you choose family over career, you're going to feel angry about it. You're going to feel resentful about it because career is your top sphere. So you really do need to know that at least your core values are in alignment. About religion, it doesn't mean that you have to be the same religion, but you have to not only respect. Here's another reason for the divorcing. Too many people say, but you know what? I'm not a practicing Christian, so I'm okay with marrying someone who's Jewish because that doesn't affect me until they get to the holidays. And suddenly they're like, I wanted a Christmas tree up and he doesn't want a Christmas tree up, right? Or he doesn't want our kids to have a Christmas tree, or I never gave this any thought, right? I didn't know. So religion doesn't just mean the practice up. It can impact cultural things and the things we observe, days we observe, and how we observe them and holiday. You have to know, is that important to me? Do I need someone who's so find someone who's kind of in alignment with those main core values, someone who it's not their job to make you lift up, but it is their job to not put you down, and that you have fun with them. You feel good about yourself with them. And if those things, and the communication is good, know that's the other reason to be with someone, that they are able to communicate in a healthy way, that they can feel their emotions, express them, and release them in a healthy way. And those are usually the main things that you need to be able to be a solid unit, to move forward, but not if you don't know that you want it. So you have to stop and question it. Is this really what I want right now or at all? And how do I start putting things in place to get what I want, whether it's marriage or it's not?
It seems to me that, like we talked about earlier with the whole like social media and things, and you can kind of like scroll through people's profiles and, oh, they like this and I like this. And, I mean, it sort of almost commodifies the idea of relationship, where it's like you're making a purchase of a product sort of thing. And I came across a video actually yesterday of a young girl. She has this YouTube channel where she does like, sort of life coaching and a little bit of relationship stuff like that. And she was talking about this whole idea of like telling girls like, hey, if you really want to know a guy's true intention, like, hold out from, sleeping with him for like the first few dates or the first couple of months or whatever, like she was kind of talking about it like this transactional back and forth thing. And I'm just like, that's really dehumanizing, first of all. and it's like, you've got like, I mean, again, going back to the whole sexuality with females, like it's almost like you're taught to have, you've got this commodity and you have to like utilize it to your own ends.
Well, I tell people that's game playing. That's manipulation. And so there is a lot of truth to the woo-woo concept of the law of attraction. And you attract kind of what you are. And if you're going to use things as a game, right? So you're playing a game. Well, I'm not going to sleep with him until he does this, right? Or I'm going to use this so that I get that. Or I'm going to, I'm being manipulative in my actions and controlling in some way in my actions, or trying to make a certain outcome or something like that. That's game playing. I tell people I really only have one rule for dating, and it's treat people the way you want to be treated, right? How would you feel if someone did that to you, right? How would you feel if someone was, playing a game with you or trying to manipulate you into doing something or being someone? So when women come to me with that, I say, no, throw away that book, the rules and all of that crap. And so just treat people the way you want to be treated. So how is that? How do you want to be treated? Right? Because if you play a game, you're going to attract game players. And so when people usually say, I keep attracting these people that like the chase, and they only want, they say they like hard to get women and they like the chase. So I keep needing to play this game. I said, that's because you're putting out the energy that attracts those people. And at the end of the day, they don't want a relationship. They just want the game, right? So to not attract game players, you have to stop playing the game.
Yeah.
And again, that means knowing what you're okay with. So for some people, that's, I ask them, what do you need to feel comfortable to have sex with someone? If it's not marriage, if you're okay with having sex pre-marriage, what do you need? Well, I want to make sure that they are STD free. I want to make sure that they're not sleeping with anybody else but me. I say, okay, so do you feel comfortable enough with this person to have that conversation with them? Well, no, not yet. We don't really know each other that well. Then don't sleep with them, right? Don't sleep with them. You should at least feel close enough and comfortable enough to someone that you can talk about those things that are important with you before you go sleeping with somebody. So it's kind of like identify what you need to feel good about that decision and make sure you're at a stage in your relationship where you can get those things. And that's really it. That's not a game. That's just knowing your value and worth, right? And that can take longer for some people or shorter, or some people are totally fine. But yeah, that game playing, the holding out of the sex, or the guy must always pay, but I'm going to reach for the check as a test. Then if he calls me out on it, if I say, oh, no, Mark, I'll pay half. And you say, oh, cool. Okay. Then I'm going to judge you for it, right? And say, oh, he failed my test. right? I tell women, if you're going to reach for the check, don't judge that person for saying okay and be 100% fine with the fact that they took you up on it. Otherwise, you're playing a game, right? And that's not good energy. So anything like that, I tell them to drop it, leave it at the door, start getting a new way of thinking about it.
Okay, Rita, I want to just make up a scenario here for you and see how you handle it in real time.
All right.
So let's say there's a young woman who is Orthodox Jewish and she's dating a man who's like fundamental atheist, and both of their families are, very serious about their religious beliefs. So the woman and the man, they're madly in love. They want to get married. They want to spend their life together, but they know that they're going to feel intense pressure from their families, probably forever, for their whole lives. And they come to you for a session. They need help. What would you do?
Well, first I'd send them to another coach.
You don't get to.
Great answer.
No. I really love dating coaching, not so much relationship coaching. But I have had that come up from a single-sided before, right? I don't usually coach both people, but what I do, and that sounds an awful lot like me and my husband, except for the extreme family pressure. But he's agnostic and I'm Christian, and that was definitely a very big deal for us. I go to church even more than the holidays, and he doesn't even go on the holidays, and so there was a lot that we had to communicate about it. But one thing is to get, if you feel like if you feel like this is the person and they're meant for you, sometimes you have to make hard decisions, right? And you have to really, at the end of the day, say, what is my ultimate goal? What is my priority? What is most important to me? And if you're trying not to alienate your families when you make that decision, there are some really, really great people out there who can actually sit down and mediate these discussions, right? And who can make sure that you're at least communicating. Most people feel okay with it if they know, it's not that they're happy about it if they lose family members or if family gets upset and angry, but they usually feel very good about their decision if they went about approaching it in a really healthy way. And so the first
right,
thing
I can't even venture to guess like the number of people that are in this situation. I just know it's a lot because I've known a lot in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But the core of it is just, intense family pressure.
Sure. And pressure
it's
in
like
all ways.
if you choose to it's like, all right, we're going to get married anyway. People do that, and then they create just like this stressful.
They haven't thought it through. That's
experience.
It. It's all about communication.
Well, a lot of them have. Like that's why a big reason why people elope sometimes. They can't take it. They just need to get away, and they know what they want, and they feel that they need to just completely cut the cord and separate themselves from their old world and just start their new life, and they feel that that's the only thing they can do.
Sometimes,
and
they do, and that's
sometimes.
Because they're not weighing all of their. When you make a big decision in life, I don't care what it is, you need to think through the different results, the things that could result from that situation, and say, how would I handle that if this happened? If I decide to cut off from my family, how would I really feel if I never talk to them again, if I never see them again? How will it affect this, and this? And you need to go to people that can help you talk through that, because then you go, okay, I have looked at all of the potential kind of, spin-offs and the chain of what happens after I make this decision, and I'm thinking it through. I've made it thoughtfully, not emotionally. I might have had the initial thought to do this from an emotional place, but I've taken a moment to think it through logically and really make sure that I'm okay with the end result, whatever that end result may be, that I'm going to be okay with it. Too many people stop after the emotional decision and they don't get to the logical decision. And that's where it can cause problems in the future.
I just kind of want to go back a little bit to the whole idea of, these negative connotations that we have around sexuality, and especially, I guess I can only speak from my own experience within the Christian context, but, I'm a huge fan of Russell Brand, and I used to watch his TV show. He actually interviewed Larry Flint, hustler, Hollywood, whatever, and he said to Larry said to Russell that if he hadn't ended up in the industry he said he would have been an evangelist. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And it's this whole idea. And he actually made some points that I found myself wholeheartedly agreeing with about, the church and sexuality, and how this sort of repression leads to all kinds of, it makes it such a taboo thing that it makes people go crazy almost about it. And you have such a distorted view. And that's sort of what I was keen to sort of, if you can elaborate on a little bit.
You know, though, that always kind of pushes my buttons a little bit, because I say, so as children, scientifically, they have proven that children fill in the blanks to their detriment. So when they don't know something, they automatically fill it in to be something to their detriment. But at a certain point, we become an adult. We become able to get information on our own, to start questioning things on our own, to fill in the blanks on our own, and not to our detriment, right? So to say, well, my religion and my upbringing and my blah, blah, blah made me do that victim mentality, right? That my situations and my actions and my choices. A lot of people say my choices are a result of my situation. So I grew up in this religious situation and that's led to my choices. And I say, you have to realize that your situations are a result of your choices. Your choices aren't a result of your situation. Your situations are a result of your choices.
So it's like a cycle.
If you want a different situation, you have to make new choices. But that usually means getting new information around something or having new experience around something. And that's where you have to take personal responsibility to say, wait a minute, this is not how I want to be. Right. So that whole concept of at a certain point, you have that's not an excuse anymore.
Rita, I totally hear what you're saying, and I wholeheartedly agree. I really do. But just to push back a little bit, and one thing I'd be keen to sort of speak to is that whole idea of, yes, that's one side of it, but I think there's an initial point where there's so many people out there who don't even recognize the initial problem to stop the cycle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's going to be something that's so deeply rooted and so deeply within that they're going to have to work that out on a deeper level. I mean, sometimes they won't even recognize that it's not serving them and taking them to where they want to be. Sometimes they put it's something deeper. It's kind of like a repressed thing, or it's their action that results from their upbringing is something that is almost compartmentalized in their mind on a big kind of a deeper psychological level. And that's not my wheelhouse, right? I'm not a therapist. I'm not a licensed psychologist. I was a lawyer, right? I was a lawyer. Yeah. So that's different. Like that level that you're talking about is something that, yes, it can happen, but that's deeper. That's what I mean by sometimes people really need to go talk things through in a way that gets into the inner workings of the brain.
Sure. And I can appreciate, like you're saying, it's not your sort of field of expertise. Totally appreciate that. But you must surely have some thoughts on it for yourself where, like, in your experience or your opinion, like, how do people sort of start to even recognize, hey, I've got some toxic issues here that I need to sort of work through? Because that's kind of what I'd like to sort of...
It's usually when they're not getting the results they want. So they say, I want X. I want whatever X is. So I want this kind of career. I want this kind of relationship. I want this kind of job. And they're out trying to get it over and over and over, and they're not getting it. It's never working out. And at that point is usually when people go, okay, so maybe it's something that's happening with me and here. Maybe I might have to explore that because I've explored everything else, right? I've tried different guys and different jobs and but I'm still feeling the same result of unhappiness or disconnect at that point is usually when they wake, and it's usually in their 40s. It's usually when they're in their 40s or 50s. I mean, every now and then I've had some 30-year-olds and but usually in their 40s and 50s, and they say, oh my gosh, like this has got to stop. I need to get something different in my life. So the only way I can do it is by saying maybe I can change it. So it's like a light bulb that goes off, but only after so many years of not having that and going, there has to be something more. There has to be something. Maybe I'm causing this.
Yeah. I guess, suppose just to wrap up, that sort of goes full circle right back to your experience at the beginning that you shared about where you started out, sort of thing. So I guess in conclusion, is there any, like, if you have any sort of final thoughts or anything like that, and then if you just want to give us any like websites or links where people can find you?
No, I guess, my final thoughts really are, I tell people all the time, it's a hard thing for people to hear. People do not like to hear it. But I say, you have to make today the day you turn in your award for being a victim, your Academy Award for being a victim, playing the role of victim. You turn it back in today and you say, I don't want to play that role anymore. Instead, I'm really going to sit down. People take more time planning out the job that they want to have or the car they want to buy or the house that they want to live in, as opposed to the life they want to live. And you really need to sit down and spend some time saying, this is really what I want in my life. And all of these areas, this is what I'd really like to have. And start really seeing what the decisions you're making every day, is it bringing you closer to that or pushing you further away? And then you might have to go with a coach or go with somebody to find out, well, why? Why are my decisions not decisions that are in alignment with what I want? And explore that more. But don't be scared to do it. Don't feel like it makes you less of a person, or it makes you more of a person, because you're saying, this is important to me and I'm willing to do what it takes to get what I want. And a lot of people aren't. They just kind of go on autopilot and let life happen to them instead of making life happen for them. So that's really the one thing I like to leave people with is if your life isn't going the way you want it to, if you're not having any experiences with relationship, dating, sex, I don't care that you feel like you want to have, just at least start questioning it and saying, that's a first step for me to start making life happen for me instead of letting it happen to me.
Awesome. Rita, do you do like Skype coaching? And where can people find you online?
Yeah, I can. I do. Yeah, definitely. So my website is Rita Goodroe, RitaGoodroe.com. And then all my handles online. So on Blab or on Periscope or on Twitter, it's at Rita Goodroe. And then my Facebook page, same thing. My page is Rita Goodroe. So you'll find me everywhere under Rita Goodroe. But I do have a page for a date coaching program that I do that actually starts next week, but it runs a couple of times throughout the year. And the website for that is takechargeofyourlovelife.com. So it's takechargeofyourlovelife.com. And that goes into a lot of detail about so much more than what we talked about today, but also everything that we talked about today. So that might be of interest to people as well.
Awesome. Hey, well, thank you so much, Rita. That was really, really insightful. That was awesome.